Hey there, Malcontents. Here is the Malcontent. How is everybody doing tonight? We have a packed show for you. There is David Preston is going to take over the show tonight, and that's not by intent. We will get into that a little bit later. We're going to jump into it because we have a lot going on. All right, with that said, let's roll. First thing we're going to do is we're going to jump actually to breaking news out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Giselle Fetterman is the lieutenant governor's wife in the state of Pennsylvania. And we're just going to go ahead and roll that clip.
Pennsylvania's second lady, Giselle Fetterman, says she was verbally assaulted as she left a local grocery store tonight. Fetterman posting video of the confrontation on Twitter. The video shows an unidentified woman telling Fetterman she doesn't belong here and refers to her with a racial slur.
It's been in the comment sections. It's been in emails or in letters. When it's directly to your face and it's this close to your face, it's a whole other jarring experience.
Christine, it all started as a trip to buy one item here at the Aldi. The second lady said she was verbally assaulted inside. An innocent trip to the grocery store ended with this. Just moments before, Fetterman said the taunts and racial slurs started inside.
She says, there's that N-word that Fetterman married and said I was a thief and I didn't belong here, and then kept walking.
Fetterman paid and ran out to her car.
I got in my car and I began to back up, and I'm crying and shaking by this point. And she comes out of the store with no groceries, just with her purse. And that's when I was finally able to get my phone, and that was like kind of the end of it.
America. It's mind melting. So the story of Giselle Fetterman is that Giselle Fetterman came to this country, I say as a dreamer. She would fall in as a dreamer today, but she came here as an undocumented individual. I say an undocumented individual because she came here as a small child. She has since gained her citizenship legally, et cetera, et cetera. But that is probably part of what drove this verbal attack. Omari talked about this today in this morning show about, it's one thing in the comments, it's another thing when it's in emails, and Giselle referred to that, and then it's a whole nother thing when it's actually in your face. We have to do better, America. And if I look ahead to the election and I look at what happened to Frank Nitti and I see this kind of incident that's just happened, it really makes me concerned about, where is Pennsylvania going to land on November 3rd? Because the hate seems really strong there, Pennsylvania. I don't know what's in the water. I don't know. I don't know what is up with you there. But this is bad. It's bad. There's just no other way to put it. There should be no room for this in 21st century America. And here's the other thing. People think, there'd be what if that woman had a gun? Oh, it's just words. What if she had a gun? What if she had a knife? What if a security detail was with Giselle and things all of a sudden went very, very south very, very fast? And we would be having a much different conversation right now, and everybody would be angry on both sides. We have to come, I think that's going to be a big thing into this show. We have to come to a place where we can have discord, where we can talk to each other. And actually, we're going to jump right into our first story, which is the recap of the protest and rally activity that happened. We had a roller coaster weekend in Malcontentment TANGO. We covered the Back the Blue rally. I call it the Back the Blue rally. I know I'm getting that name a little bit wrong, so I'm going to say Savannah. I know I'm getting it wrong, but you're going to get it right when we roll that first clip. And then we also did the Melt Ice rally. And with that, we're going to start, first of all, up in Seattle on Saturday at Green Lake Park. And we're going to go ahead and roll that first clip.
My name is Savannah. I run Back the Blue Washington on Facebook, and we are in the process of building a nonprofit organization.
If me and you are fighting in the street right now, and the cops roll up, who's going to jail?
It's a great
gosh. My daughter has come to me many times about the system of the police and how the police were started originally, and with the slave trade and
They were slave catchers.
right, exactly.
And they hired the poorest of the white folks to do that.
Right, exactly, to get the slaves back. And that is how the police organization originally started.
So you know this.
I do know this. I do. And I work very hard to hear my daughter's side, because how the hell am I going to expect her to hear my side if I'm not listening to hers, right?
I think this world is fucked up the way it is. And it doesn't matter if you're black or you're white or you're Asian or Hispanic. The whole world is fucked up.
Look, love, this color, when I walk outside, everywhere I go, someone's looking at me. I gotta worry about my children's children and their children's children. That's very
But that
imperative.
is not how I look at you.
Well, love, that's not how they look at us.
Let's have some dialogue. We should stop all the hate.
Well, first I say I appreciate this opportunity to conversate. I came here to back the blue, that's what I do.
See that look right there? You don't know what that feels like. Hey, yo. All right, man. Hey, listen.
So there you go. This is a really good example of something can be what you want it to be. Because on Saturday, as the Back the Blue and the Black Lives Matter protests came together, it turned into basically what you want to see. And we're going to show the good, bad, and the ugly. So Back the Bluers, who are probably furious on the keyboards in some of those channels, we're going to show it all, and we're going to show it all actually in some painful detail. What I want to go over, though, is a couple of those clips there. What had happened was Back the Blue rally was going for about maybe 70 minutes. David Preston of Safe Street Seattle, or Safe Seattle, he talked like for, what was it? He got the mic at 51 minutes. He gave the mic back at 1 hour, 9 minutes, and like 51 seconds. So he talked for just under 20 minutes. And actually, I think the only reason he kind of stopped is because the Black Lives Matter protesters showed up. And I was actually going to reach out, but then Dave had a little bit of a tweet hissy fit this morning. And I called something out on him on Twitter, and I'm going to call it out here on the feed. David, you said your event was disrupted because the camera doesn't lie. The organizers didn't even know your name, and we have that clip up on Twitter. That's Malcontentment T, just the letter T, not Tango, because you can't have a thing that long up there. It's Malcontentment T if you want to go see that 20-second clip. The other thing I want to say, and people are just, tonight I'm going to piss everyone off. Guarantee it. Everyone's going to leave this feed pissed off, which means I did my job. The organizers, the actual two women that organized this event, I really don't feel they're chuds. I don't agree with them. I don't agree with their views. But both of them exhibited a willingness to go and talk. Yes, one of them called the police and 911 when the people came up and there was some pushy-shovey. I get it. And the police said, we're sitting this one out. Welcome to the world of the other side, because this happens on the other side all the time. Now, because David really inserted himself in this, and because he talked for, sorry, 1 second. Okay. I was just making sure, because sometimes there's audio problems, and I have this set up like to vibrate, and it just vibrated like crazy. And I was like, we lose sound. We didn't lose sound. All right. So back to what I was saying. We're going to dissect, because I really wanted to dissect a lot of what David said. And he said a lot, and there's a lot to dissect. And so you're going to have to bear with the show for about the next 20 minutes. I'm telling you, the speed's going to pick up after that. We're not watching 20 minutes of David speaking. And with that, I'm going to roll the next clip.
And it's the police who uphold the rule of law. Because without the police, who's going to come here and protect your right to speak freely? Is it going to be some council member? Is it going to be some social worker? No. Ultimately, it's the police who protect that. And I know that for a fact because I've seen it in action. The previous two rallies, Back the Blue rallies that I've been at, there was a large cordon of police around our folks. And on the other side of the street, there were some really angry-looking protesters.
Yes, some very angry looking protesters. Hey, David, we filmed actually both of those events, and we, like we did on Saturday, moved back and forth through both sides. As a matter of fact, at the second event, which was the larger of the two rallies, I stood less than 12 inches from Mike Solon. Mike Solon actually stepped back a little bit, bumped into the camera lens. No purpose on him. It's just there was a lot of people trying to get shots of Cliff Mass. I actually said very softly, sorry. He just kind of looked at me, no problem. He shifted over 6 inches. I kind of just whispered thank you and continued filming Cliff Mass. I also interviewed people in us. Not only that, there were a lot of protesters from the other side that were moving in and out from the other side. The other thing is, David, if you bothered actually to go around the perimeter, yeah, there was some shouting, there was some yelling, absolutely. But there were also conversations and dialogue going on, and we filmed some of that too. The second rally was much smaller. That was the one that we interviewed Peter Diaz of American Wolf, and we interviewed several other people. And again, moving back and forth on either side. And the reality of that was there were probably 150, and that's being generous, people that showed up to support SPOG. There were probably 100 police officers, if not 150 police officers there, and there were probably 50 counter-protesters there. I even talked to one of the police officers and said, I think you guys outnumber both police, and he laughed and they said, I think so too. So why are you a professional victim? Because that's really how you're coming across. And with that, we're going to roll the next clip.
And it's the police who uphold, and we allow them to do that by letting them be anonymous. So they don't have to use their real name if they have a story to tell. They're not allowed to just say anything they want with impunity. If they make a claim, a fact, I have to know them personally, I have to meet them, speak with them. I have to trust them before I will post their information. That way we know that they're not just going to tell tall tales or defame other people.
All right. Anybody that's been on Safe Seattle knows there's been tall tales on that site. And so, David, you need to work on your fact-checking skills. That's really all I'm going to have to say to that. Anybody who's been on that page, anybody who's been on that site knows that there's just been some stuff. Say what? Great example of that, David, is when you were you got those photographs from West Seattle of those awful Black Lives Matter on the pavement that were spray painted. Oh, wait a minute. They were Blue Lives Matter, or they didn't say Black Lives Matter. They were something in reference to Blue Lives, and then you guys pulled all the stuff down. Yeah, you do a great job of checking and verifying there. Let's keep pulling this apart.
But then in exchange for that, we give them anonymity so they can say what they're not allowed to say or what they don't feel safe to say in other places. And that's why it's such a popular page.
Yes, we give people anonymity, and that's why it's a popular page. You know who else gives people anonymity? 4chan and 8chan give people anonymity to say whatever the heck they want, and they are steaming cesspools of vile and filth like the Mos Eisley space station in Star Wars. And again, anybody who's dived deep into those comments, into the pages there, knows there's a lot of anonymous hatred on so-called Safe Seattle. It's very, very ironically named. So with that, let's go to the next. By the way, this is like in sequence. I haven't skipped ahead here.
But since I've been managing that page, I've seen a degradation of free speech right. I've seen people become more and more afraid. I've been with the page 4.5 years, and in that time, I see a lot more people saying, I have something I want to share with you, but I absolutely can't put my name on that, because if I put my name on it, then my neighbors are going to find out about it and they're going to dox me. They're going to splash my name all over social media. And then
ironic comment.
My friends aren't going to talk to me. Maybe I'm going to get fired. I can't do it.
Guess what page I was a hot topic on when I got doxxed by Mike Solon? Anybody would have guessed? That's why I kind of said there, it's a really ironic comment. And we don't want people to get doxxed unless we disagree with them. If we disagree with them, oh my, we want them doxxed. We want them doxxed, we want them doxxed, we want them doxxed. David, dude.
You're not the same. I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
I've heard people say, I don't even want to go to City Hall anymore because they're not going to let me speak anyway. I'll put my name on a list. 2 hours, 3 hours later, maybe I'll get a chance to speak for a minute. And I know the city council is going to ignore what I say. So that's not free speech. That's not freedom of assembly. It's just in name only, but it doesn't mean anything.
Okay, wait a minute. Time out. Time out. Okay? Time out. Has anybody ever gone to City Hall and put their name on the list to speak to their city leaders and walked out of the room going, wow, they really listened to me, regardless of your political stripe? Has anybody gone to City Hall, gone up to speak, and then felt like they were listened to? Come on, you know what the answer to that is. The answer is no. It's not about the First Amendment, it's about a broken system. And on this, David, I'm going to agree. The city leadership in Seattle is a steaming pile of poo. I was saying this to people on the police side, on people that I was like, Jenny Durkin, I'm going to say it again. Top 50 cities in the United States, she has to be the least popular mayor in the country because nobody likes Jenny Durkin. Nobody. Left, right, middle, up, down, it doesn't matter. Like, nobody likes her. I don't even know if she likes herself. But again, what is the professional victimhood here? Because this is what it just feels like. You know, oh, we're not saying they don't listen to us, and they don't listen to anybody, David. Come on.
I've seen moderate and dissonant and voices ignored by the media. We hear constantly from Safe Seattle readers this comment: why isn't this in the news? Why am I not seeing this story on TV? There's like a homeless camp that's really a headquarters for criminal activity. It's been there for months.
Oh my God. Yeah. Why doesn't the mainstream media cover this? You mean mainstream media? Wrong button. You mean mainstream media like this mainstream media? Here we go. Cairo 7. North Seattle neighbors complain about smoke and noise from metal shop constructed in homeless encampment. This story ran about 4 or 5 days ago, David. I'm pretty sure Cairo 7 is mainstream media. I'm pretty sure that Cairo 7 is very, very pro-police and very, very anti-Black Lives Matter and very, very anti-protester. They are probably, of the 4 major affiliates, the most anti of the 4 major affiliates. Wait a minute, Dave, there's more. On the same day that you're up there going, how come the mainstream media doesn't cover this homeless encampments? Growing Seattle homeless encampments brings new problems and mounting frustrations. Guess when this story ran, David? It ran on the very day that you're standing up on the stage. How come they don't cover this stuff? So that means that story was already in the can and was already being worked on when you were up there and talking about it. And if you go up in Cairo, they have been doing an extension of that. You go on then to mention in that, and I've cut this part out in the interest of speeding things up, about how Como did their special on Seattle is Dying. And they did that about a year ago. You said 2 years ago, believe it or not. I know, I get it. C disease and all that other stuff. It feels like 2 years ago. But it was about a year ago, if even that. It might be about 11 months when they did Seattle's Dying. And by the way, David, if you go up to malcontentment.com and you read my piece, Welcome to Gotham, Seattle, I was in a period of where I was probably more in your camp than you're in your camp. And I wrote all of my frustrations, and there was a number of things, not everything, but there was a number of things. I don't like the name Seattle's Dying because I don't think it's Seattle's Dying. You're portraying it as Seattle's Dying. Seattle has huge monumental problems, but more police aren't going to solve the problems. But David, don't be disingenuous here and sit here and say to us that the mainstream media, why aren't they covering this story about these homeless encampments? It's like, it's right there. It took me 5 seconds to find those stories. And you were talking about your mad fact-checking skills. Let's roll the next clip.
There have been complaints filed against police officers with the Office of Police Accountability just for commenting on our page. It could be a really neutral comment. It could be like a thumbs up to a story about police. And those will trigger a complaint by people who want to shut us down. A complaint against the officer who makes that comment. And even if the complaint is not justified, it's not upheld, it takes 6 months to process. So if you file an OPA complaint against an officer, even if it's totally bogus, that officer is in the wind for 6 months. They can't transfer out. So that's a real threat. And that keeps officers from using their real name on our page. Whenever we get anonymous contribution from a police officer who wants to tell us about some aspect of their daily experience, we have to be extra careful so that none of the details they give us can be traced back to them, because it could be their job. That's how serious this problem is.
Okay, so we're actually now starting to skip some chunks, because they said I'm not going to do all 20 minutes of this. It's like, where do you start with that? Where do you start? That's right. Some police officers get in trouble for thumbing up posts. Thumbing up posts, for instance, about cheering on Summer Taylor being murdered and Diaz Love almost being killed. You know what? I don't want my police officers applauding murder of citizens exercising your First Amendment rights that you claim to cherish and respect. Sorry, man, we're not on the same page on that. That's number one. Let's go number two. There's this thing that people on the political right love. It's called a work at will state. And Washington is a work at will state. You know what a work at will state means? That means if you have green eyes, you could walk into work tomorrow and the boss could say, you know what, I don't like green eye people anymore, you're all fired. Because green eye people are not a protected class. The end. And almost every employer today, and part of that employee agreement, from the lowliest burger flipper at McDonald's to an executive at Microsoft, all of them, David, sign employment agreements that have social media conduct clauses in them. And businesses have the right to fire people and censure employees because we're a right to work state. You don't like that? How about we get rid of the right to work state? Oh, no. That might be socialism. We wouldn't want to do that now would we? All right. Yeah. Next clip.
So here, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go back a little bit, because if they're going to turn the speaker volume up, what will happen is it will blow out my microphone. And it'll blow out my microphone, not blow it out as in destroy it, but you won't be able to hear anything.
You know, free speech is speaking up and saying your piece. Free speech is not shutting someone else down. It's organizing your own event and getting people to come to your own event.
There.
I see. You know, I'm really going to respond to this one, because this just oozed of white privilege. White person to white person. This so oozed of white privilege. I cannot count at this point how many peaceful protests that the other side has set up where white people came in and were shouting over Black, Indigenous, and person of color's speakers. Good example of this happened in Shoreline when high school girls, strong high school girls who were experiencing racism, were shouted down by a white religious man. We filmed it live. That's the first example that comes to mind. When there were Black leaders speaking in Olympia at a peaceful march to the governor's mansion, there were people that came into the right and tried to storm the stage and break up the conversation, to the point that it drew everyone's attention and the speakers had to say, don't pay attention to that. You keep paying attention to us. Don't let us win. So I am sorry with your BS white privilege that 1A rights is we just get to stand up and blobulate, and nobody gets the opportunity to say, I'm sorry, we don't like the bill of goods that you're selling. Because you know what? Your side has exercised that over and over and over and over again. And I'm calling you out for your BS. All right.
So SPD, bicycle officer.
Why do you look 50? Back it up. Stop doing it! Why is your homie all the way over there? Oh, Lieutenant David is helping us. Wait, are you trying to talk to me? Oh no, I'm so scared. Hey, Jump on my back, right? Alright, cool. Fuck that nigga. Oh, white power? Was that what that was? You piece of shit? Hey, look, SPD's over there trying to... They're definitely trying to come and do this now. Let's just put up with somebody. Oh, yeah, you better run. Get the fuck out of here, all of you. Get the fuck out of here right now. Go back over to the bike cops and get protection right now.
All right, so what happened here is there were groups that were, we showed that, there were groups of people that were talking, and there was actually a lot of interaction that went on. There were a couple of very small groups, one group to my left, one group to my right. We filmed as much as we could on the group to the right, but quite frankly, every person that was there that was either press, a streamer, or an a-hole just with a camera surrounded all of this incident that happened with this guy with Lieutenant Dan Patch. Katie Davis Court was there, and she was there, and she was being Katie. And I'm actually going to defend Katie, despite the fact, Katie, that you slagged me out on Instagram on Saturday. Come on, it's like you're acting like you're 20. Oh, wait a minute, you are 26. No. It's not cool. Not the yelling and all the other stuff and her professional victimhood, and she does operate like a professional victim. Yes. Pepper spraying her for no reason. I told you I'm going to piss everybody off tonight. Everybody's going to leave this feed pissed tonight. It's just no. That's no. Is she a chud?
Chud. It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
These are chud. Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
Yeah, she's absolutely a chud. There's no question. You're going to get no date bed. She works for an awful organization that has growing accusations of election manipulation and election fraud, who their communications director praised Adolf Hitler. We're going to get into a little bit more of that one tonight. That's a little bit of a trigger for me with the whole Jewish thing, but we're going to get into that one. I'll save that one for the thing later. But there's no excuse for it. There isn't. It's broad daylight. You're in a park. No. That's just really all I can say. It's not acceptable. So there you go. The malcontent defended Katie. I'm demanding her First Amendment right to be a total piece of crap chud.
Chud. It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
And that's all I'm defending there. Let's roll the last clip.
So SPD, bicycle officers have moved in. Estimate about 15 bike officers. No, wait a minute, here comes the second group. About another 10. So I would actually now say that it's a...
We're ordering you to stay out of the intersection. We're moving up to clear the intersection of obstructions. Failure to comply with 760 is arrested.
Police are coming up on the other side of the bus.
You're creating a public safety hazard. We're ordering you out of the intersection. Out of the intersection to create a public safety hazard. If you re-enter the intersection, you'll be subject to arrest.
Out of the roadway. Quit your job. Quit your job. Quit your...
Okay, so what had happened was at the end there was a small group of BLM protesters, and there is a ton of construction on that strip of road around Green Lake, and there's just soft construction barriers. What I mean by soft construction barriers, like cones and stuff, they're just everywhere there. So they blocked the intersection. SPD came in with approximately 25 bike officers, and Lieutenant Brooks in his DJ. Lieutenant Brooks, you need a better sound system, man. You need to complain. You need an upgrade. You need to talk to some DJs. You need to contact DJ Elrad down in PDX because their game is up way higher than you. And they went ahead and they cleared all that out. As soon as they cleared it all out, the protesters put it all back. And then the police came in with a pickup truck, loaded everything up in a pickup truck, and then packed up and left. And then at that point, basically, it was over, and everybody went home, and that was it. So there was a lot to unpack there. And there was other things that I wanted to unpack, but David Preston had a hissy fit on Twitter. And I wanted to unpack kind of what he went over in this 20-minute, like, you can't call it a speech, you can't call it a screed. It's like, I don't even know what to call it. It was like, it wasn't even necessarily rambling, but it was just, you could kind of feel everybody was there, kind of like, dude, come on. And a lot of the stuff, he's just like, again, the whole City Hall doesn't listen to anybody. Like, what do you want, a cookie? Are you kidding me?
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Now we're going to go to Sunday, and we're going to go down to Tacoma. We're going to roll this clip down there for the Melt Ice rally.
They will take your service as an EMT and murder you in your sleep and give you no justice. We're here for them, but that doesn't mean we forget about Breonna Taylor and everybody else.
They take our jobs. And the truth is, when all this started happening with immigration and Trump and everything, a lot of the immigrant farmers got scared and left.
Yep.
They were like, fuck this, I'd rather
Truth.
be my país and be poor than be the threat of being put in a cage. So they left, and acres and acres and acres and acres of food just went to waste.
This country was founded on people coming and taking what they wanted. Taking gold, taking oil, taking their pound of flesh, and not caring about the rest.
Yeah, so that group of protesters was out there for a little bit more than 2 hours. It looks as cold and wet and miserable as it was. We didn't do poll cam at either of these events. Because actually of the threat of weather. Poll cam is weather resistant. I haven't made it fully weatherproof, and that's something actually I'm going to work on this week, is hardening that and making it weatherproof. And so we're using what I call Poll Cam Junior, which is really just the monopod that I was using when we started filming all the way back in May and June. So at that event, I want to talk a little bit about Christina D. Christina D is a streamer, and she's also very heavily involved in setting up particularly these ICE events down in Tacoma. And I want to talk a little bit in particular what she was talking about. So what happened when the Trump administration cracked down and did this whole, they took our jobs. Oh, I should have had that on a button. They took your job. They took your job. They took your job. So when all that was going on, here's what happened. The worker in the field wasn't necessarily an undocumented worker. Now, someone in their family might have been undocumented. And so what the family became afraid of is that that individual would get arrested. So they all packed up and left. And then what's happened was down in Florida, tomatoes and strawberries just rotted in the fields. There was nobody to pick them. They couldn't hire anyone. And this also happened to a lesser extent down in the Salton Sea area in California, where a lot of peppers are grown and things that grow better in very, very hot weather, because it is miserable to work down there. And the farm work is absolutely hard. Here in the state of Washington, our apple crop was going to rot on the trees, and farmers had to go and use prison labor, had to pay the prison system over $20 an hour because they had to pay the inmate. And then the inmate at the end of the day only makes $1, so they're essentially working as slave labor anyway, but they had to pay for the guard that was watching the inmate, they had to pay for the housing for the inmate, and they had to pay for all the meals and all the potential other stuff that goes around for the inmate. So hence, when all of that was added up, the cost became more than $20 an hour. And this was an extreme hardship on farmers, which are suffering extreme hardship as it is now. And the reality is, undocumented workers do the work that Americans feel, quite frankly, are beneath them, right? Because, my kid can't find a job. Plenty of jobs over in Wenatchee picking fruit and vegetables. Well, I don't want to have that kind of job. man, America. It was a good event. Despite the weather, I would estimate it peaked out at about 75 people. It's a little hard to see where everything's at because there were some people it was kind of stretched out when the speakers were going on. It was really pouring at a couple of points. And so there were some points where I'm actually standing outside in the rain, but I have the camera like this under the tent area. I want to congratulate Black Coffee for their outstanding soft launch. They had lines out the door. It was wildly successful, and they had huge community support. And I would just like to remind you, Seattle, that after Starbucks had windows broken, there were 16 arrests in less than an hour. Black Coffee in Shoreline, and I get Seattle versus King County. Black Coffee in Shoreline was attempted to be firebombed, all caught on camera. And that's going on past 2 weeks now. And how many arrests have there been for that? That's right, 0. You can take all the time you want to unpack that, Seattle. And with that, we're going to go to our first commercial break, which happens to be Black Coffee. And more about them after the break.
Black Coffee is a hub for communities and a hub for meeting people, making friends, and understanding.
What Black Coffee is to me is a place to actually call home, a place where Black youth will feel welcomed, where Black families will come and feel like they're at home.
What we're trying to build is more than just coffee. Community is something that we do naturally. We know who's in the community, we know what the deficits are, and we're trying to fix that. We want to bring people together.
My hope is that the phrase grounded in excellence shows up everywhere and that it becomes a movement.
I'm looking forward to hanging out at Black Coffee with my friends and feeling safe.
Black Coffee to me means opportunity for people like me and my other friends and family to come here and do homework safely and hang out and stuff like that.
That is happening. It is happening.
Black Coffee is on Highway 99 in Shoreline, Washington. They're up around 170th, and they are going to have their full opening on the 17th, October 17th. That's coming up. It's not that far away. And of what I heard about, unfortunately, their soft launch was only for 10 to 1, and we were filming the Back the Blue event down at Green Lake, so we weren't able to get out there for the soft launch. Everything I've heard about the soft launch is that it was amazing, and I have huge confidence that they are going to knock it out of the park on the day of their first opening. And they have some amazing artworks, and I cannot wait to get my t-shirt up there. One of the t-shirts they have for sale. I cannot wait to get my hands on it, but I'm going to have to wait till at least the 17th. We need to do a little outreach. We just don't want to show up with our cameras. We're actually hoping we can shoot a little bit of video for their grand opening. I love doing that kind of stuff. I love actually doing, this is a lot less stressful. It's a different kind of stress. But this isn't like stress like the filming the protests are. And so I love doing this stuff. All right, with that, we're now going to go down to Portland, Oregon. So Portland, Oregon, there was good news that came out for streamers in the press. And the good news for the streamers in the press was that the federal court was no longer unenjoined. So in other words, the police had to leave the press and the media alone. They couldn't arrest them. They couldn't tell them that they needed to disperse unless there was a unlawful assembly order or if there was a riot decree. Very, very similar to what Seattle had. And before that had been rescinded, and then on Friday, that was declared, no, you have to leave press alone. And then we're going to go here to Alyssa Azar. We did ask Alyssa. We sought permission to play her video clip. We didn't hear back. And so, again, it's all about integrity. Kitty. Meow. Andy. It's about integrity. We didn't hear back. I'm not going to play. But I'm going to go ahead, if you want to watch the video, and give her a shout out here so you can go after the show, not right now, but that you have there. Basically what happened is that Portland police moved in. They mass arrested a group of protesters, and there was members of the press there, both independent journalists and also some say there's a lot of what you would call mainstream press in the Portland area, but a lot of people think of ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox if you say mainstream. And so, no, their organization's a little smaller than that, but they're still mainstream press. Not only were they pushed back over a block by the police, but when they were challenged, it says the TRO says you could do that, can't do that. One of the police officers said, I don't care about the TRO. Now, one of the things that I have said many times is, if you've ever watched the feeds, I'll say something unlike, that's not a hill I'm willing to die on, which is the metaphor for I'm not willing to go to jail for that. I'm glad I'm not there, because you'd have been hearing about the malcontent getting arrested. I wouldn't have stood for that. I just wouldn't have. Because the First Amendment is precious to this. What were they hiding? Why didn't they want the press to see those arrests? What were they hiding? Because that's what it looks like. It's for the security of the state. Those are the words of the oppressor. And I get that there needs... look, I don't think it's right for people, say, to be 2 feet from an officer when they're arresting somebody with their camera just like that, because they want that killer shot. They're looking for the clout. They want to get the 20,000 views. Or they've just lost a little bit of activity. There is a line between you are obstructing and interfering and you're being supportive of the First Amendment. And it's just no. And when the police say, we don't care about the rule of law, there's a problem. Dave Preston, who claims that he loves the First Amendment. If you love the First Amendment so much, David, maybe, I don't know, maybe put something in the comment or something about whether you agree with the police here saying, we don't care about the press's right to film a protest. Because I know that people like Andy and Kitty like to steal those videos and then distribute them. And so they ultimately don't get their clout either. Just putting it all out there.
You're not the same. I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
All right. And with that, we're going to go ahead then to the next day. And there was a Chud attack in Portland.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
These are Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
And so the Proud Boys decided that they were going to show up in a group in downtown Portland and raise a little hell. I want to thank Streamworks, who gave us permission. Kitty and Andy. And Jason Rants. That's right, Jason Rants in the MSM. Jason, you're in the MSM, man. You should know better than to take people's stuff without asking. So we're going to call out Jason Rants. Streamworks gave us permission on this, and I want to call out Kevin. Kevin is a great streamer down there. We've done watch parties for Streamworks, and he is somebody worth watching. He shot over an hour of video. We've done a summary of this. It's about 3.5 minutes, and then we're going to unpack it. And with that, I'm going to roll the video.
You are terrorists. You are fucking terrorists. What you are. You brought weapons into our city to attack us. Get him, fuck him up. Get him, Watch out. Hey, Casey.
So this guy in front of me is firing on people across the street. Paintballs. So they're throwing projectiles from the top of the parking garage that I'm standing under on 2nd and Madison, the norms that the cops normally park in. They've taken refuge on the 5th and 6th floors and are throwing things at people across the street right now. Water bottles on both sides. And it looks like now that the weapons have been drawn, there might be a response here. Here come some more officers to help with the whatever they're doing here. CNP 3213. So the police officer just said that no one's taking 911 calls because everyone's tied up with this. I don't know if I can believe this guy here. The 11 officers that I saw comprises of the entirety of the response available for this city to 911 calls is what I think he's trying to sell this lady.
Much to unpack there. All right. So what happened is that the Chuds,
It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
were marching around in downtown Portland, intimidating people, brandishing weapons, brandishing guns, brandishing pepper spray, carrying clubs and sticks and bats. All the things that the Chuds accuse the protesters of doing. And it devolved into them shooting at the people. Now you're probably going, you were in that video, you didn't show what happened. There's nothing to show. You can go up to Streamworks Media, up on Twitch, and you can watch all 59 minutes of the video there. There is nothing to show. The actions were unprovoked. The other thing that you'll see and you watch that, if you watch the whole 59 minutes, is there are people that were brandishing, not paintball guns, real guns, pointing them at people. It's in the video. It's not acceptable. It shouldn't be acceptable. And so Portland police show up and do nothing. They do absolutely nothing. And this feeds into the narrative of the Black Lives Matter protesters and people that identify with that movement, but maybe are not doing things that go with that movement, and feed the narrative that the police don't serve them. They pointed guns at people. They shot people with a paint. Look, you're going to tell me it's okay to shoot people with a paintball gun? Okay. I'll go down saddle with a paintball gun. We'll see how long it takes for me to be in a jail cell, right? Because it's not okay. It's not cool. It's wrong. It's totally wrong. There were cars pulling out of that parking garage, the white Subaru, no license plates on it. Hey, drive off. There were cars there with out-of-state plates. By Portland law, you can bring a gun, but the gun cannot be loaded in the city of Portland if you are from out of state. There are people in those vehicles that had guns. There's certainly probable cause to go, hi, how you doing? Yeah, we'd like to search your vehicle, and they could say no, and then they'd say, okay, we're going to be detained, and we're going to wait while we get a warrant to search your vehicle, and then they could get the gun and go and see if a round falls out of the ground. If a round falls out of the ground, they just broke gun law in Oregon, and there would be consequences, serious consequences for doing that, right? Right? So who are the police working for? Because we saw this in Michigan with this piece of garbage sheriff.
You're not the same. I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
Right? That sheriff up in Michigan that was like, hey, they were just trying to do a citizen's arrest. And as you start to go down the rabbit hole, what you find out was that he was at some of the same rallies with this militia. So whose side exactly is he on? And there shouldn't be sides in the first place. The police shouldn't be taking sides. David Preston's upset at the Seattle police, not because they didn't respond, because they didn't take a side. Seattle police's position was, according to David Preston Screed on Twitter, was, hey, unless there's an assault, we're sitting this one out. And look what happened. It really, at the end of the day, compared to other events, didn't evolve into a complete shit show. I'm not saying, oh, but you want to abolish the police. I've never said I want to abolish. That's well known. That should be no surprise in the protest circles. I don't like the word defund because that's the marketing person in me. I think the word defund makes people go, oh, Lord, save me. What am I going to do? I prefer the word unburden. I prefer the word demilitarize. But I do think when you're dealing with violent actors, you still need some organization to respond to that. However, the organization as it exists today is not broken. It works perfectly. It's just corrupt to the core. And it needs to be completely revamped and rechanged because the police shouldn't be picking sides. Because what I've witnessed in Portland is if you're a protester and you're standing in the street, you get tackled by 5 cops. You get pepper sprayed, and then you get stuffed into a van and you face federal charges. But apparently, if you walk around with a Trump flag, you can kind of shoot whoever you want in the street. Well, it's just paintballs. It's paintballs today. Talk to me on November 4th. And with that, we're going to go ahead and roll our second piece. The Malcontentment Tango is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live as they happen. To defend the First Amendment, using our rights of a free press and to petition the government for redress of grievances, and to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support us is to like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, and Instagram. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. All right. Thank you, malcontents. Very, very much appreciated. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. You should not be calling it Columbus Day because Christopher Columbus was a bag of smack. And that goes into our third story. And with that, let's roll that clip.
In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
He was a rapist and a murderer who was horrible with directions. So why does Christopher Columbus get a holiday again?
Columbus didn't discover America. You can't discover a place where people are already living. But we celebrate that every October. It's a lie.
Contrary to popular belief, not only did Columbus realize the world was round, so did his contemporaries.
Columbus was greeted by the Arawak. They offered help to the voyagers, including food and hospitality.
Just when he was about to return to Spain on Christmas Eve, his ship, the Santa Maria, ran aground and sank. A problem arose when all the sailors who had accompanied Columbus could not fit on the 2 remaining and smaller ships. So, a fort was built using the salvaged wood from the Santa Maria, and 39 men were left behind.
While he initially described the Native Americans as kind and peaceful, Columbus had no problem with his men raping and killing them.
They do not bear arms, and they do not know them, for I showed them a sword and they took it by the edge and cut themselves out of ignorance. They have no iron, their spears are made of cane. They would make fine servants. With 50 men, we could subjugate them all.
For the second voyage, Columbus was given a fleet of 17 ships and some soldiers. Upon arrival at La Navidad, Columbus found the fort burned to the ground.
In addition to raping and pillaging the indigenous communities, Columbus ended up enslaving countless native people and forcing them to mine for gold.
The Spaniards took revenge for the destruction of the Fort La Navidad and also took slaves. Columbus forced the Taínos to work in the gold mines searching for gold.
Confident that his colony had been thoroughly pacified, Columbus brought his second voyage to its end. He returned home a wealthy man, the admiral of the ocean sea.
There was forced labor. The punishments were pretty draconian. He would chop off hands. He would crucify the natives if they didn't produce their quota of gold.
Any dissent from either the Taino or Spanish is met with violence as Columbus rules by terror. The Plaza de Armas in Santo Domingo was the setting for many of Columbus's public mutilations.
The Spanish king and queen sent a royal investigator to calm the situation. Columbus and his brothers were found guilty for numerous crimes against both the natives and the Spaniards. Columbus and his brothers were arrested and put on a ship to Spain.
Las Casas wrote, "Such inhumanities and barbarism were committed in my sight as no ages can parallel. My eyes have seen these acts so foreign to human nature that I now tremble as I write."
How then, Kenneth, did this actually end up being a day? I mean, a holiday here?
Interesting. Well, partly it's the way we like to tell history as a story of pride and patriotism,
Right.
and somebody has an agenda. And so in 1892, it was a big deal for America. By 1934, when it became a national holiday, the Knights of Columbus, an Italian-American organization, really had the political clout to get it named as a holiday that still celebrated those ideas of progress and enlightenment. It's only later on that the scholarship showed how terrible this arrival really was for the Native American people.
So there's a lot to unpack here. So let's go over this. As the video that we have prepared for you highlighted, and we'd like to thank everybody and all of the property owners on that and the fair use video that we created there. People didn't think the world was flat in the 1490s. That's a myth. That myth kind of started getting created in the 16 and the 1700s when, interestingly, as they were coming into what was this age of enlightenment, this age of industrialization, there was a bit of kind of this anti-science movement that started, and that is actually where flat earth came from. Anybody who was educated in that period knew that the world was round. That basically had been proven it was round over and over and over again. And by 900 AD, it was generally an accepted fact. The one thing that wasn't an accepted fact, how big was the earth? Now, what Columbus was arguing is not that I'm going to go sail off in this perilous journey and potentially fall off the side of the flat plane. Sorry, flat earthers. That's not what his argument was. His argument was, look, in order to get to India, like India, because we'll get into that in a minute, you had to sail all the way down to Africa, back up and around, right? It was this long, dangerous journey that took forever. He's like, we'll just go this way. We'll go that way. And if we go that way, we'll just get there in like, I don't know, maybe like 2 months. And people were like, dude, we think the earth is a lot bigger than that, and you're out of your mind. It's not going to happen. But the real argument was how long the journey was going to take. Here's the ironic part. Had Columbus not landed in the Caribbean areas, we would have never heard of Christopher Columbus. He wouldn't have even been a footnote in history because he literally would have sailed off into the sunset, never to be heard of again. His crew would have died of thirst or died of hunger or both if he had to sail the actual distance. And the other thing is, he didn't discover America. It is very, very much well accepted at this point that the Vikings were chilling out in Maine and in parts of Canada, what Maine in the modern United States, and parts of Canada around 1000 AD. There certainly was knowledge of the settlements that were in Greenland and Iceland, and stories of a land that was past that, which again is this Maine and Newfoundland and Nova Scotia and kind of those northern provinces up in that area. Now, when he arrived, he had a problem because he promised the royal family that financed all of this cities of gold and, and silk and, it's India. And so when he showed up, he's like, wow, they don't talk like Indians. They don't look like Indians, but I'm going to call them Indians. And that's why we call them Indians, while the rest of the planet calls them First Peoples or indigenous populations. And we call them Indians, which, of course, in your attempt to say to have some degree of political correctness, it's like when they're Indian, right? Then you're like, well, no, wait a minute, are they indigenous or... Anyway, thank you, Christopher Columbus.
You're not the same. I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
And he really was a sick asshole. Those words that the Native American, those that was reading, those are Columbus's actual words. So that is what Columbus wrote, is that we could just subjugate them. Give me 50 men and we'll subjugate them all. Of course we know, wrong answer, because there were 39 men there. And, lo and behold, they got a little rapey, they got a little steely, they got a little stabby, and the indigenous population all got together and they said, we thought they were gods, But gods wouldn't act this way. And all but one of the leaders were like, you know what, you're right. And so they decided to kill them because you can't possibly be gods, because gods wouldn't treat us this badly. Yes, weren't they just a bunch of heathens? Weren't we so enlightened with our Western civilization? And so Columbus shows up with 1,500 men in 17 ships. And he also shows up with a bunch of missionaries, because we got to convert them into our Lord Jesus Christ. Because remember, what's going on in Spain at this time? The Inquisition. The Inquisition. Look out, sin. We're on a mission. Yeah, that's right. That's what's kind of going on at the same period here. It's not a very enlightened time in Spain. They ran into a problem when they started educating natives. The natives educated actually very, very well. And they could read and they could write. And then they started understanding how the Spanish were screwing them over. So they had to subjugate them and keep them as second-class citizens. Does this sound familiar, America? Doesn't this story sound so amazingly familiar? And so what does he do when he comes back and he finds the fort is burned and the men is killed? He goes on a rampage. And on top of that, he's been told by the crown, look, this 17 ships and these 1,500 men, dude, you got to deliver. And he noticed when he on his first trip that some of the indigenous people had small amounts of gold. There was a little bit of gold in the islands, but there were no gold mines. There was no vast treasure there. And some of the gold they had was simply from trade from some of the other indigenous peoples in other parts of the region. And that's where some of that came from. And it wasn't good enough. And so he, through violence and brutality, took everything that could possibly be taken from Hispaniola, which is now modern-day Dominica and Haiti, and took everything they could possibly take, packed up 4 years later and said, mission accomplished, and established the capital of Santiago. Then they were like, okay, third trip, you're going to go back. And he became the first, as far as we know, Western explorer to land on South America. He landed in parts of Venezuela, but then he went back. And at this point, he was the governor. And he ruled with unbelievable brutality. Some considered him a madman. The written testimony of people are, because we have the written archives that were sent to the British Crown. If people did not meet their gold quota, if an indigenous person did not meet their gold quota, their hand would be cut off but left just with a flap of skin, and then they would just be allowed to slowly bleed to death. People would have literally chunks of flesh cut off of them, and then in their bleeding wounds tossed to starving dogs so that these starving dogs would rip that person to pieces alive. They would get people, 13 of them, and hang them by their wrists. And then they would wrap them in straw and burn them alive. Why 13 people? 12 disciples of Jesus, baby. What a guy. Las Casas, that quote that he wrote in his testimony against Columbus, he was a slave trader. What he saw was so awful. Out, I'm out, I'm done. And he became a priest. And that's what he wrote in his testimony about Columbus. Columbus treated the natives so bad at the turn of the 16th century that the Spanish crowd went, what the fuck? We're going to send some people over because the letters and stories we're hearing, what the living fuck? And when they got there, they reported back to this. And think about how long this takes back then, right? It's a 2-month boat ride. 2 months for them to get there. Who knows how long to investigate? Then they got to write their holy ass crackers letter. 2 months to get there. Then they got to read the holy ass crackers letter. Then they go, arrest this guy. Because his brutality also extended to his own people, which is probably what really had him wind up in jail. However, we're going to stack the charges on him and say that he was completely brutal. Now, you heard the story on why we celebrate Columbus Day. It was pushed by the Knights of Columbus in 1934. It became a federal holiday because the victors get to write the history. But the grim reality of all of this is that Christopher Columbus didn't think the world was flat, didn't prove the world was round, didn't discover America. He never set foot on the lower 48. Never set foot on it. Not once. Never set foot in Latin America. Did set foot in what is now modern day Venezuela. He burned, raped, pillaged, murdered, tortured, destroyed. It was estimated 3 million people were living in what they called Hispaniola, which then has become Dominican Republic and Haiti. By the time that he was put in chains, there were 100,000 people left. He so mismanaged as governor that in his quest to find just every little ounce of treasure that he could get, he didn't dedicate anybody to tend fields, grow crops. And there were no large animals on those islands. There were no farm animals. It was an agricultural culture. And not only did the indigenous people starved, the Spaniards starved while he was living like a king. Now, Columbus was able to convince them to get out of cuffs because the rich get away with it. It hasn't changed since the early 1500s. It's stunning, isn't it? 520 years of this. And he got to go on the fourth voyage. And the fourth voyage is forgotten because it was a complete and total disaster. The boats he were given were junk. And by the time he got there, the wood had become so parasitically infected that the boats were leaking like sieves. And they all had to abandon ship and wade onto an island. And it ended in disaster. This is not Columbus Day. We should not be celebrating this in this country because what we are celebrating is a big lie. You're rewriting it. This is correcting the history. This isn't rewriting history because we know this is the real history. You don't know that. Yes, we do. Because they all kept records, because they were writing back then and they were keeping historical records, and there was a trial and there was complaints and there were letters and there was testimony. And we know he was a bag of smack. We know that he was convinced he was in India. And when he came back from the first one, it's like, see, Indians, India, ha ha. He was nowhere even close to India. And I'll close with the fact again that had North America and the Caribbean islands and South America not been where they had been, we wouldn't even be having this conversation today because Columbus would have sailed off and never have been heard from again. And the world would have been a better place for it. Think about it, malcontents. All right, we're going to go ahead and roll our next spot.
To the side. Music has a power greater than words can really express. Songbird, sing a song to me. Let me know where I'm supposed to be. It's such a shame, yeah. Well, I was your TV girl. The EP is called Blue, and my website is classicelishamusic.com.
Great EP, wonderful woman, wonderful singer. It's available in Bandcamp and iTunes, $13 for download. You can go to the website that was highlighted in the spot, and you can order a CD with a bonus track for $15. She is working on her first full-length LP, and we are looking forward to having her in studio when that first track goes to drop. It was an honor and a privilege to get the opportunity to film her performance back in August, and it is something really worth looking at. All right, malcontents, our next story takes us to California, and what we're going to do is we're going to roll that clip.
There is a voting controversy cropping up in Southern California after a fake ballot box was called out by county officials.
Local voters in the area are now concerned about that fake ballot box and wondering what happens to the ballots already dropped inside of it. Lori Perez has more.
It was insane. I can't imagine in what world you would think that that would be acceptable.
Shannon Katie first spotted the drop box on the pastor of Freedom Way Baptist Church's own Facebook page. You see a gray metal container with a taped sign which says official ballot drop box, and the pastor, Jerry Cook, wrote underneath, "Our church has a voting drop box in front of our complex. If you are voting early, drop your ballot on by." Katie and others alerted the LA County Registrar's Office, which responded on social media saying this is not an official vote by mail drop box and does not comply with state regulations for drop boxes. The Registrar's Office told me tonight they're trying to reach Pastor Cook and working with council to issue a cease and desist letter. Other posts on the church's website show it hosting a forum for Republican local candidates and criticizing the Black Lives Matter movement. With that in mind, some locals are frankly suspicious of what the church's intentions were with the box.
That's what I think their intention was. And it turns out there are a lot more of these drop boxes. And it turns out that the Garcia Republican candidate running for Congress has been reaching out to friendly Republican church leaders, asking them to put out these drop boxes to go ahead and grab ballots.
You're not the same. I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
Fuck you! You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.
Thank you, Donald. I appreciate that endorsement very, very much. It's really amazing that the party that is wailing and screaming and crying about voter fraud and voter intimidation is the ones that are consistently out there committing voter fraud, voter intimidation. What about those ballots in Pennsylvania? Those were naked ballots. They were, by the Republicans' requests in court, not supposed to be counted in the first place. They were only improperly disposed of. What about that mailman in West Virginia? The mailman in West Virginia was changing the voter registration cards from Democrat to Republican. They're still cheating, I know it! Uh-huh. You know, it's like Shakespeare, thou doth protesteth too much out, damn spot, thine still afflicts my eyes! A little Shakespearean on you right there. First of all, regardless, like Washington State, like any other state, they should have a website. You go to the website, Secretary of State website. That's going to be in all 50 states, District of Columbia, I'm sure, probably Puerto Rico also. And it will tell you where the official drop box is. Put your ballot in that official drop box. This pastor at this church, as the story that we clipped from Channel 13 out of LA, thank you again for the use of your content. As that story outlines and goes over, pro-Republican, he is also anti-mask. He has organized a number of events about right to assemble, right of freedom, yada, yada, but maybe not the right to get your ballot counted if you're not voting for the right person. And of course, this calls into question the whole separation of church and state and his tax-exempt status if he is inviting Republican candidates to his church to speak to his parishioners and doing it, quite frankly, out completely in the open. Because as far as I understand by IRS rules, that's supposed to be illegal if you want to be tax-free. And with that, we're going to go to our last story tonight, which is BLEXIT. And Candace Owen. Candace Owen is like, whenever mods and admins see somebody in the comments linking to Candace Owens.
It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
These are chut.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
That's what they think. That's what they think. As soon as they see it, it's like, we know. And they look at the profile, and it's beyond like. And then there's a couple of other chuds that they're sharing. It's like the same group of people are there. So Candace Owen and her BLEXIT movement, and we'll get into why BLEXIT movement was set up, where Trump had his first rally, but it wasn't a rally, at the White House. And it turns out that BLEXIT paid for the people to go. Yeah, they were like paid protesters. You see all those people in the blue shirts? They were paid by Candace Owen and BLEXIT to be there. All those blue shirts, because that was the requirement. Now, Candace is very, very upset and lost her job in part at Turning Point USA, and we'll get into what a bag of smack of Turning Point USA is as an organization in a minute, because it turns out that Candace is a fan of one Adolf Hitler. You know, he was a National Socialist, but if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German. She really said it. She was very, very upset because this soundbite was played at a congressional hearing back in late 2019. And it was played at a congressional hearing because she was at a congressional hearing about racism, of all things. And so somebody was like, hey, I just want to let you know who's coming up here to testify, and I thought maybe you'd like to hear this. And she was very, very upset about this. And a number of chapters of Turning Point USA were like, yeah, the whole Hitler was an okay thing. You know, look, the Native Americans were all cannibals until Christians showed up. Yeah, we put that one on the side. Some of the other batshit crazy stuff that she said, yeah, but that's a little bit of a bridge too far for us. Because Hitler wasn't a good guy. Even if he just kept it to Germany, he isn't a good guy. He wasn't a good guy. He was an awful human being. He murdered 6 million Jews. He committed genocide on his own people. He rounded up the communists and the socialists and the trade union leaders and the mentally ill. They had this thing. We've seen this term in the comments about dead eaters and a life not worth living, which is just flat out white nationalists right out of the page of Crazy Adolf. I had a teacher that would call him that, and my history teacher in 6th grade called him Crazy Adolf. I'll never forget that, because we were taught about the Holocaust when I went to school. We now have an entire generation of people that don't even know what the friggin' Holocaust was, or why it happened, or what the impact was. And you have bags of smack like Candace Owen, who should have no business being around young minds in the first place, but she's got a friggin' front row seat at the White House along with her people and organization that she paid to have there. And if you dig a little bit deeper into Candace Owens' history, it is quite a checkered past. She has 2 failed businesses behind her, a failed initiative to create an anti-bullying website that all of a sudden people were like, on the right, were like, oh, wait a minute, no. You mean you're going to expose people that dox people? Oh, no. We don't want a site that's going to actively work to expose doxers, because people like in Dave Preston's page like to work in anonymity. Do you like how I tied the first story and the 5th story? Did you catch that?
We are not the same. I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
You have to know the source and the person and the information that it's coming from. And Candace Owen is just an awful human being. It's like the nicest thing that I can say. She is an absolutely awful human being. And she got her first claim to fame suing the school district that she went to over a racial incident. And instead of paving the way for others who experience what she experienced at 17 years old, like we have seen so many times with people like Clarence Thomas and people like Amy Barrett, they just want to make sure to tear up that road and build a brick wall and make sure that no one else follows them, whether that follows them from their race or their gender. When you forget where you come from and where you forget what you were in the chase for fame or glory or clout or power or money, you murder yourself. And of what I have witnessed in my years, there's no coming back from it. And Candace Owen, you've murdered yourself. And I hope your BLEXIT movement fails like every other thing that you have touched since you've been 18 years old. All right, malcontents, with that, I'm going to flip this over. Let me see. We got any questions? Or, I mean, I know like you all have been chatting. Do you like the chat? Let me know if you like the chat. I think I need to make the chat box like maybe the font bigger. I don't want to make the box itself bigger, but it looks like I need to make the font a little bigger. So, and I can do that. It's a learning curve. You know, Trent, let me go a little bit into my history. So if I go through my lineage here, I saw your comment about, you know, you're amazed to be alive. If I go through my lineage, there are three brothers, all born in Hungary. Brother number one left for the United States. That's my grandfather. Brother number two stayed in Hungary. And brother number three left for the Czech Republic right before... right before actually the Nazis came in and said, hey, we're taking over. The family that was in Hungary was completely eradicated. There is not a living survivor that survived World War II. The second brother who went to Czechoslovakia also died in World War II, as well as numerous family members. However, a couple of his children survived, including male children. So the name lives on, and I have relatives that we discovered each other a few years ago. It's just amazing that are still alive in Czechoslovakia. And this is how I learned about the rest of my family history from Hungary. My great-grandfather was a minor historical figure in Hungarian history. And apparently he was a religious man and an educator in schools. And apparently there's some school named after him in Hungary. And so I have not gone there, but that is like life goals. Go to Hungary, go to school where named after my grandfather. Hungary is practically ruled by a wannabe dictator at this point. I have had other Jewish friends that have gone there, and I have been told that the anti-Semitism there is just awful. It is open and it is naked, as well as the intolerance just for tourists. So I'm just hovering and hoping this whole white nationalist thing eventually passes by. Yes, larger font, please. It's a learning curve. It's a learning curve. I put it up there. One of the things is I didn't get to see what it looked like until like we actually went live and on the air. This is one of the things that is a challenge is when we go ahead and run a live stream. There isn't really a way for us to run like a private live stream that you can't see. If there is, someone send me a message, because I actually know a lot about this stuff and I'm not aware of a way that we can just kind of run a live stream that nobody can see. Likewise, really what we need is a live stream that maybe just like 4 or 5 people can see and have people play around in the comments. So shoot me a message if you know how to do that. Oh, that's interesting because yes, I have a huge 4K monitor that you can't see that I'm looking at. My whole intent today was I'll be able to go like this and see your comments. And on there, yeah, it's a flippin' postage stamp. And on the iPad, it's a postage stamp. So, okay, that's good to know it's on the phone. So I've got to balance it, right? I don't want to wreck the phone in the process of making it easier to read on a computer or a TV or a tablet. By the way, I'm a squeaky pig. I love my squeaky pig. I figured I'd show people the squeaky pig. Trent, thank you so much. That's what we aim to do. And we really want to do 2 or 3 studio shows like this a week. The news cycle, we talk. And first of all, editors, mods, admins, they did a ton of work on this show, a ton of research. If you know, and I haven't said this through the whole show, and the mods and admins should kick my ass for it. You love your mods, you love your admins, spam those hearts. I know there's no equivalent on Twitch, so Twitch whatever, and I don't think there's any equivalent on YouTube, but there is on Periscope and there is on Facebook. Spam those hearts. Let those mods know that you love the work that they are doing and the admins. This show would not have been possible today if it wasn't for the great research that they had done in assisting me in helping get this done. And I love the mod team that I have. So please spam those hearts, send them your love, let them know. The last thing I want to close with is I would like for all of you to, I keep saying all the time, I'm not, I talk about Jewish, and then I joke I'm a bad Jew. I'm sorry, Rabbi Chaim. I'm sorry. And I know you love and accept me, even though I'm a terrible Jew and like eat bacon and shellfish and don't go to Shabbat like I should. And I'm not a great Jew. I freely admit that. But I do sincerely say I've got 2 messages to send out. Your hopes, your thoughts, your prayers, however you send your positive energy out into the universe. My understanding is a man that I consider a friend, a man that I have a lot of respect for as a streamer, Lakota Lickwalt. My understanding is that he is sick. I have reached out to him. I haven't heard back from him. And I know that he was getting a C disease test. And Lakota and I have talked at length. And, please keep him in your thoughts and get better soon. We want you back behind the camera. We certainly want you back behind the camera before the election gets up. And so send your thoughts out to Lakota. The other one that I'm going to ask you to send your Lakotas out is Sheriff B, Sheriff/B. Sheriff B's significant other is in the hospital tonight. Not C disease related. That's all I'm going to get into. I know more information than that, but I'm going to respect that. They're in the hospital, or I should say their SO is in the hospital. Significant other, if you know what SO is. And please keep them in your thoughts or hopes or your prayers, again, however you send your positive energy out into the universe. We ran a little bit over, but I think I really wanted to keep this to an hour or an hour and a half. David Preston, I'm blaming you because damn, dude, that what you wrote on Twitter, man, today was a screed. If you want to go look for it, we have it up on our Twitter feed. We had some commentary on it up there. And so you can go look at it there. And so with that, I just want to say, Malcontent, out. The Malcontentment Tango is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live as they happen. To defend the First Amendment, using our rights of a free press and to petition the government for redress of grievances, and to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support us is to like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, and Instagram. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
Fuck you! You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.